The Cards are back in action tomorrow night at the Yum Center, hosting St. John's in a 9 p.m. game. Brandon Tierney, who served as a play-by-play announcer for the Red Storm for the past 6 seasons, joins me tonight on the phone. Brandon, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, Chip. How's everything about you guys? Pretty good?
Pretty good, pretty good. Getting ready for a big game, tomorrow at the Yum Center. The Cards coming off a tough 5-overtime loss to Notre Dame. It was announced earlier that Steve Latman won't make the trip for Thursday's game, dealing with the death of his father, Cap, who I understand was very close to the program. Talk about what this absence means. I know Rico Hines is a guy he's been with a long time, will take over the team. What does this mean for the Red Storm?
Well, I mean, it's a different voice. It's a different voice right before you hit the tunnel for the opening tip. It's a different voice during halftime, during adjustments and timeouts. And, you know, it's a young team. You look at St. John's, they're pretty much all sophomores except Sampson, who's a freshman. So they're used to Steve, at least this year, and we know the last year was interrupted as well with cancer. But I'm not surprised, Chip. I mean, you even said it. He's very, very close with Cap Lavin. And we were just out in San Francisco in early December, and they honored Cap at the University of San Francisco. And the timing, in hindsight, was terrific because, as Steve himself said, you know, life is great, but life is tough and it's precious, and you never know. But it's also got to be about business. And while Steve steps away, you mentioned Rico Hines, and not just Rico, but even Gene Cady, who has been around this program now for a couple of years, and Steve calls him his Yoda, his Mr. Miyagi, and that's that wise sage resume that Gene has, combined with that more youthful delivery of Rico. It's you're not going to change how you play, and in a lot of ways, if anything, you should be more motivated because I'm sure a win would pick Steve up from a distance, no question.
Talking about St. John's, they're clearly on the bubble right now, 15-9 overall, 7-5 in the Big East. Talk about their NCAA tournament resume and what's the feeling around the program? I mean, obviously it's within reach. Are they? Yeah. Can you sense that they're thinking, hey, we can, this is the year we can break through and do it?
You know, it's funny. They're certainly thinking about it. They don't really talk about it much with the kids because, as I said, they're so young. And even when you broach the topic with the staff, I do the coaches report, the weekly TV show here in New York, and I've asked Steve on camera a few times, and he kind of gets into and I get it. He deflects about next game coming up, and if you win enough at the end of the day, that'll impress the committee and you get in. I'll tell you this: I thought last night's game between Villanova and Cincinnati was very big, and I think it helped St. John's out because Villanova, you're looking at 8 teams that are in. I mean. And that last team, it's going to come down to St. John's or Villanova. Joe Lenardi, that was usually, pretty much on the money. He said St. John's is among the Final 4 in, and Villanova among the Final 4 out. So, yeah, they're on the bubble. And really, I think at this point, you have to win the games that you're supposed to win. You have to beat Providence. You have to beat them. Now, they're not expected to roll into Louisville and beat the Cardinals, but if you get one unexpected win, whether it's the Cardinals or Pitt or Marquette in a week or so or 2 weeks, then I think they're in pretty good shape. But it might very well come down to the first game in the conference tournament here in March at the Garden, where if they win, it's basically in essence a play-in game. So they've done enough to put themselves in the equation, but by no means have they punched their ticket yet. Listen, hey, 50-50, flip a coin. There's some days I feel good about it, and then there's others where, I look at some of the earlier losses and I say, well, what's the committee going to do with this? Asheville was one that certainly jumps out where they blew a 17-point lead. They beat Notre Dame, they beat Cincinnati and Cincy, but they haven't beaten Syracuse, they haven't beaten Louisville, they haven't beaten the preeminent teams in the conference. I believe that there's a gap between the top 3 or 4 and then Cincinnati, and certainly Notre Dame. So little work to do still, yeah?
Talk about the personnel. D'Angelo Harrison and Jakar Sampson are playing as well as anybody in the league. Talk about what those guys have been able to do to have such consistent seasons this year.
Well, Jakar Sampson is going to be a star, not just at this level. I think he's going to be a star in the NBA. I really do. And I don't throw that around lightly. I've been around St. John's, not even as a broadcaster. I've been around the team as a fan since, I was a kid, since Chris Mullin in the mid-'80s. And the one player that really jumps out when I look at Sampson, if I wanted to compare, would be Malik Sealy, who unfortunately passed away way too young. But Malik was a very fluid, very effortless scorer, and that's what Sampson is. And I think there's a big difference between him and Harrison, where D'Angelo Harrison, he needs a lot of shots to get a lot of points. He's a high-volume shoot guy. His shot selection is, a little questionable at times. I think Sampson's been the better player. I don't think there's any hesitation as I say that. Sampson's got a skill. Forget about the athleticism, which he obviously has. He can jump out of the gym. He's wiry, strong. He gets to the bucket. He's got a nice nose, getting to the stripe. He's pretty adept at that already, even as a freshman. But what he has is a mid-range pull-up. And, you hear about that in the NBA, where guys like Rip Hamilton for so many years had that, coming off screens and burying, those 15, 16, 18-foot shots off a curl. And that's what Sampson has. Whereas Harrison's more of a straight-on pull-up, three-ball transition occasionally. But Sampson's the guy. And when he's on, they're good. When they're both on, they're really good, and that's the challenge for both to be on.
What do you see the keys for tomorrow night's game? If the Red Storm want to pull the upset, what do they have to do? What are a couple of the keys that you feel like have to turn in their favor?
Well, they're not a good rebounding team, Chip. You look at the stats, and they're last in the Big East. They just get pushed around on the window. And part of it's youth and strength and I think awareness and experience and all those things that add up over the course of a 40-minute game. They're quicker than they are, strong and thick. So that's an issue. You can't give up. And I know that you can say this about a lot of teams. You can't give up second-chance points. You have to protect the basketball. But you do. And I think the one thing that really stands out for St. John's, not like it was a couple of years ago where it was really bad, but they are still a little susceptible to those 4 or 5 minute stretches where they don't score a bucket. And if you do that on the road, especially in a place like Louisville, or as it happened this past Sunday at the Carrier Dome, you're going to look up and a 5-point game is going to become an 18-point deficit quick because the Cardinals have the personnel to do that. You might get away with it against Rutgers or Seton Hall or DePaul or even UConn to a degree, but you better not do that against the elite team. So, if they can avoid that long drought, they are tough and they've got nice depth, and they're going to fight you for every inch on the court, but they can't have 5 minutes without scoring. That just can't happen.
Well, Brandon, hey, thanks a lot. Great stuff. Enjoy the game, and I hope to catch up with you again down the road.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And by the way, we were watching the game with, and I'm sure you've talked about this a lot. When we were in Syracuse over the weekend, we were sitting in the restaurant bar, and we were watching the 5 overtime. Hey, Coach Pitino, how about using a timeout, huh?
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard that from in the last few days. I'll tell you that right now.
I didn't think I was, man. That's why I brought it up, buddy. I'll see you at the Garden soon.
All right, thanks, Brandon.